What up to everybody in the chat? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another episode of Tuesday nights on Tuesday nights. What's up to everybody? As you come in, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button for your boy. If you're new to the channel, I appreciate each and every one of you guys for your continued support. Of course, we're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons official 53-man roster. We're going to get into a lot of different things tonight, but we definitely going to chop it up tonight and talk about this 53-man roster. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for your continued support, continuing to support the channel. I appreciate all of you guys who comment on the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you guys, but it's time to talk some NFL football. The football season is upon us. We're looking at basically 1 week. This is the last week before the NFL season kicks off next Thursday with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, the Philadelphia Eagles at home unveiling their Super Bowl banner from last season. So, with that being said, I want to say what's up to you guys. So make sure when you jump into the chat, you guys say what's up to your boy. Um, I'm definitely going to jump in and give my thoughts on the 53-man roster. Some surprise cuts today, but for the most part, looking at this roster, everybody that I thought would make the roster actually made it. It was only a couple of surprise cuts from based off of what I actually saw. Just looking at that 53-man roster. But like I said, if you guys can hear me, definitely, you guys let me know that y'all can hear me in the chat. Make sure y'all go ahead and put some comments in the chat so I can recognize you guys. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And as I said, as you come in, make sure you hit that hit that like button, share out the content. But with that being said, we're gonna jump right into things with this 53-man roster. Before I jump into the 53-man roster, just some quick Atlanta Falcons news. I'm pretty sure each and every one of you guys, if you follow the Atlanta Falcons, or have the notifications on your phone and things of that nature for Atlanta Falcons news. Right tackle Caleb McGarry was placed on IR and will be out for the this upcoming season, for the whole season. Um, Most likely, he probably will have season-ending surgery if he hasn't already had surgery on that knee. And I think that that's the best thing for him. They said he got a couple of second opinions and things of that nature. But when it comes down to it, I definitely think that would be the smart thing for him to do, is just sit out the full season so he can get back completely healthy. We know that knee injuries and lower extremity injuries for the big guys is definitely something that you want to get taken care of, because those type of injuries can linger and can be like career ending. So of course, with modern medicine and things of that nature, things have gotten a lot better in that instance. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into this 53-man Atlanta Falcons roster. And of course, we're going to start off with the most important position on the football field that everybody talks about, which is the quarterback spot. And at that quarterback position, of course, we know the starting quarterback of this Atlanta Falcons team, QB1, Michael Penix Jr., and Kirk Cousins. This was one of the surprises for me for this Atlanta Falcons roster, because I did think that they would have had Easton Stick on the 53-man roster, but they're going into the season with two quarterbacks on the roster, with Michael Penix Jr. and Kirk Cousins, and that just tells me that they were serious when they said that they wanted to have Kirk Cousins as the backup quarterback, which I think is smart. As I continue to say, strength in numbers and depth is very, very important. So I definitely think when it comes to keeping Kirk Cousins on the roster, that's definitely something that's important. Knock on wood. Of course, we don't want nothing to happen to Michael Penix Jr., but if something were to happen to Michael Penix Jr., even if it was for a couple games, that Kirk Cousins is a veteran guy. He showed us last year early in the season that he was one of those guys that can put up big numbers, and he already is familiar with this Atlanta Falcons offensive scheme. So with that being said, what's up to my boy Dre Murphy in the chat? He says, "What it do?" what the business is, how you Jew, and how the family feeling on this Tuesday night. Oh man, doing good, man. I appreciate you you joining me. And shout out to NFL Nerd 67. He says Kirk needs to retire. I mean, at this point, I mean Kirk's making his money, but I definitely think that Kirk he still has some game left. But I definitely think that he's the best backup in the NFL, hands down. No comparison. He's definitely the best backup. So, with that being said, at the running back spot, the Falcons kept three running backs: uh, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and Nathan Carter. And I believe Nathan Carter was probably the surprise for everybody as far as making the team. He is a guy that I mentioned in previous videos. I wasn't surprised to see him make the roster. I did think that the Falcons may only carry two running backs so they could create space at other positions like the DB position and the defensive line position, but they decided to bring three running backs on the 53-man roster. And I definitely think that Nathan Carter is one of the better guys that played in the preseason for our Atlanta Falcons on this roster. He did a really good job in training camp, and he really stood out in those preseason games. Him scoring that long touchdown run, I believe it was like a 42-yard touchdown run, and he had showed good vision, showed good burst, and he was a guy that ran through arm tackles and things of that nature. So I think he's a good fit for this Atlanta Falcons team moving forward. So I definitely understood why they kept him on the roster, and I felt like the Falcons did a good job on this roster of rewarding the guys that actually played well during the preseason. There were a few guys that got cut that I thought should have made the team, but Nathan Carter was one of those standouts in training camp and definitely a standout during the preseason. So I'm glad to see that he was rewarded for what he did in the preseason and things of that nature. Now, at the wide receiver spot, the Falcons kept seven wide receivers. And this is where I thought things would get kind of tricky because a lot of those guys balled out at that wide receiver spot during camp. But we kept Drake London, of course, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Cordero Hodge, Casey Washington, David Seals the fifth, and Jamal Agnew. So in this list, the surprise guys that made the roster was David Seals the fifth. I knew that the Falcons liked what he was doing during training camp and during the preseason games, but I thought that he kind of was outplayed a little bit by Chris Blair during the preseason games. To me, Chris Blair was the best wide receiver out there playing in those preseason games based off of his production and based off of what I saw him do by the eye test. But I understand why they like David Seals because he's a guy that's can run the full route tree. A guy that can play on the outside as well as play in the slot because of his route running ability. And he's one of those bigger wide receivers at like 6'2". And they like some of the things that he was able to do. So I understand why they kept him on the roster. He was one of those surprise makes of the roster. And then Jamal Agnew was another guy that I thought maybe possibly wouldn't have made the roster, being that he didn't play at all during preseason. And he sat out most of training camp as well because he was injured. He's mainly a return specialist for our Atlanta Falcons. So I was surprised to see him actually get on this roster. But shout out to Jamal Agnew. Hopefully, it's not a serious injury. Based off of him making the roster, I'm assuming that they were keeping him out for precautionary reasons, so he wouldn't, re-injure anything or have any nagging injuries coming into the season. We'll definitely know in about a week or so, week one. So 2 Sundays from now, we definitely will know whether Jamal Agnew had a serious injury if he's able to play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week one. So Jamal Agnew definitely is an explosive returner. Guy that played with the Jacksonville Jaguars is a guy that our special teams coach raved about for many years since he's been with us. So I wasn't surprised to see Jamal Agnew make the roster. Based off of what the coaches, the special teams coordinator and his coaches were stating about him and his ability to flip the field and things of that nature. But I do, again, believe that some of the guys that were cut, the Chris Blairs of the world, I thought he deserved a spot. Nick Nash was another guy that played really well during preseason, and I thought he could possibly be a guy that sneaks on the roster as well. But we'll see what happens in regards to those guys with the practice squad. if they pass through waivers. I don't know if either one of those guys will make it through waivers based off of what they showed in the preseason, what they put on film. But we'll definitely will see as of tomorrow. I believe at Wednesday at 12 noon is when they can start signing people to the practice squad or signing players. So we'll see what happens in that regard. In the tight ends position, there was four tight ends that made the roster, and I thought that this was a little shocking too. I thought it would only be three guys to make the tight end spot, but we had Kyle Pitts Sr. make the roster, of course, Charlie Warner, Felipe Franks, and Tegan Quintoriano, and Felipe Franks was the guy that I didn't have on my list last week when I gave my projection of the 53-man roster, my prediction. But Felipe Franks did score a touchdown in that game against the Dallas Cowboys, and he played well during the preseason. And he is another one of those guys that's a special teams ace. Can run down on punts, run down on kickoffs. Kind of a Swiss Army knife, a guy that came into the league as a quarterback, played quarterback at the University of Florida, but is a guy that can do a lot of different things, and he's just an athlete. So I really feel like they kept him on the roster because of him being like a glue guy, a guy that can do a lot of different things. So I understand why he made this roster as well. So shouts out to Felipe Franks. He was one of the surprise makes of the roster. I didn't think he would make the team. I thought he would probably be a practice squad guy, but it was very interesting to see us keep four tight ends based off of. I felt like it could have been some other guys, or we could use that spot in some other, in some other position groups. But shouts out to Felipe Franks. He definitely was one of those guys that deserved it, especially based off of his special teams ability. Now, in the offensive line category, we kept 8 offensive linemen. So Jake Matthews, Matthew Bergeron, Ryan Newsel, Chris Lindstrom, Elijah Wilkinson, Jack Nelson, Javon Gwynn, and Kyle Hinton. Now, I wasn't really surprised with any of these uh, guys that made the roster either. I didn't have Kyle Hinton on my previous prediction, but he's definitely a guy in Kyle Hinton that can play both guard spots. He's a guy that's very versatile. I believe he can play a little bit of the center position as well. But he's been on this roster and been a backup for our Falcons for the last couple years. He was on the team last year, so I'm not surprised to see him make the roster. And we know that the Falcons did bring in a trade for Michael Jarrell today, who's a swing tackle. We traded with the Seattle Seahawks, so he's also going to be a part of this 8-man or 9-man rotation at the offensive line. Now, at the defensive line, the interior defensive line, we had 5 guys that we kept, which I thought was shocking. I thought we would keep more interior defensive linemen, especially how the Falcons raved about we were going to be kind of running, playing multiple guys on the defensive line and rotating those guys. But we kept on the interior defensive line David Onyemata, Brandon Dorless, Lacal London, Ruka Rororo, and Zach Harrison. Now, Lakel London was a guy that was probably the surprise make over some of the guys that we had. Guys like Contavious Street that I thought possibly would have been on this roster, on the active roster, the 53-man. Now, we know that you can elevate guys off your practice squad. So Contavious Street is one of those guys I think could possibly be on the practice squad, and they may keep him around because he's also a guy that's relentless on the defensive line and plays with a hot motor. But I think Lacal London did prove himself during training camp and also during the preseason games. He was consistently in the backfield, consistently getting pressure on the quarterback, and consistently making tackles for loss and being disruptive on the defensive line, especially against the run. So I definitely understand why they kept Lacal London. But I think him and Contavious Street, both of those guys are hustle players. Contavious Street is one of my favorite guys as far as a rotational guy, because every time he comes in, it seems like he has a huge impact when he's activated or when he plays during games. So shouts out to Contavious Street. But we did keep those 5 at the edge rusher position. We had Arnold Epicadi, we had Jalen Walker, Leonard Floyd, James Pierce Jr., Braylon Trice, and D'Angelo Malone. And none of these were surprises. All of these guys I had making a roster. Of course, what it shows me is that this Atlanta Falcons team wants to be very athletic and be able to run to the football. And all of those guys on the edge are pretty athletic. We really don't have any of the old school defensive end types. Most of those guys are playing in the inside with Brandon Dorless and guys like Zach Harrison. Can those guys line up on the outside like as a traditional defensive end? I think they could. But all of our guys that we have on the edge position, all of those guys are super athletic, pretty fast, and they can use their being to get around the edge. But all of those guys are really good athletes. So shouts out to the defensive edge rushers on this Atlanta Falcons team. We did keep 6 of those guys. Now at the inside linebacker position, we kept 4 guys: Caden Ellis, Devon Diablo, J.D. Bertrand, and Josh Woods. To me, the surprise make of the team was Josh Woods. He's another guy that they rewarded because he played really well during preseason and that training camp, and he was out there making plays, forced a fumble in that first preseason game, and he was flying all over the field. Both him and DeMarco Hellams played really well in that first game, and Josh Woods also made a couple big hits on special teams as well, going down on kickoffs and punts and things of that nature. So I definitely think that Josh Woods deserved to make the team. Now, I really feel like he benefited, both him and J.D. Bertrand benefited from Troy Anderson being injured and currently being on the PUP list. So that gave them, the opportunity, guys like Josh Woods, to actually make the roster. I thought that J.D. Bertrand could have been on the chopping block, both him and Josh Woods, but they decided to keep those 4 inside linebackers. At the defensive back position, the cornerbacks, we had A.J. Terrell make the team, of course, Mike Hughes, Billy Bowman Jr., Clark Phillips III, D. Alford, Mike Ford Jr., and Natron Brooks. And I feel like all of these guys were well-deserving as well. Natron Brooks is a guy that I did a video earlier on. I feel like he was one of the guys that definitely deserved to be on this Atlanta Falcons 53-man roster because he played well in all 3 preseason games. He was one of the better guys all training camp long and all preseason long. And he's a guy that can do a lot of different things. Not only can he play the defensive back position, he can return kicks and return punts. And we've seen him doing that during the preseason. And he also can run down, on kickoff, run down and be a gunner on punts, punt returns and stuff like that. So I definitely like to see, that he did get rewarded as well for his play throughout training camp and throughout the preseason. So no surprise makes on this roster as far as the DBs. Mike Ford Jr., I don't believe I had him on my, I don't remember if I had him on my prediction 53-man roster, but he's a guy that's mainly a special teams ace as well. And it shows that this Atlanta Falcons team, they definitely value the special teams portion of the phase of the game, because we've seen them keep multiple guys that are mainly known for special teams, guys like Cordell Hodge, guys like Felipe Franks, and now guys like Mike Ford Jr. All of those guys are known for their special teams abilities. Guys like D'Angelo Malone is another guy known from his special team prowess. So glad to see those guys, all those guys that got rewarded, for the way that they played during the preseason and throughout training camp. Now at the safety spot, there were 3 safeties that actually made the roster: Jesse Bates III, Xavier Watts, and DeMarco Hellams. The one that stood out to me that we didn't actually keep Jordan Fuller, who is a guy I thought it would definitely be on the 53-man roster based off of his familiarity with Raheem Morris's defense. But what that tells me is that Xavier Watts is showing, have showed them enough during this preseason and during training camp that they think that he's ready to start, or he's ready to take a significant amount of snaps. So I could see Jordan Fuller possibly being a guy on the practice squad. But yeah, definitely surprised to see that they only kept 3 safeties. But we do have guys like Billy Bowman Jr. that is like a Swiss Army knife. He can also play the safety position like he did in college. He moved from corner to safety. He played both during college and played the nickel. So you have guys that can do multiple things. And I can also see us running like some three safety sets as well, based off of the guys that we actually have with Jesse Bates, Watts, and DeMarco Hellams. All three of those guys are pretty versatile and can play a lot of different roles on the defensive side of the ball. Um, and before I move forward, I just want to jump right back in the chat really quick because I see a few of you join me since I've been talking. So Georgia Texas boy says, "What's going on, Jew? AFN and Falcons family. The new era is here. Atlanta Falcons will rise in 2025 and beyond." I agree. And let me scroll down here. And Dre Murphy says Josh Woods is Coach Unchained's boy. He's a beast. He's a dog. He's a problem. Yeah, Josh Woods, he was making plays. I just like to see guys make plays. So I've been mentioning this pretty much all preseason long. I don't believe that anybody should just be given a position. I really feel like you have to earn it. And the guys that I think that went out there and earned their spots and took preseason seriously and made plays, they were rewarded. Outside of Chris Blair, which I think that was just a numbers thing, a numbers issue. I really feel like all of the guys that were like standouts during camp and during the preseason, they got their opportunity to make the roster. William Amy's, what's going on, man? He says, I told you Jordan Fuller was cut. Yeah, I mean, you did say that last week that you didn't think that Jordan Fuller would make the roster, and he ended up not making the 53. Do I think he'll be on the practice squad? I do. And I really still think that Jordan Fuller is a really good player, to be honest with you. I think that the other guys that they have, they just believe in those guys a little bit more. Like we know what DeMarco Hellum showed us in that first preseason game where he was just flying around, laying the hat on everybody. And then we know what Jesse Bates, we know he's the best safety in the league. And then having a guy and Xavier Watts, he's another big time playmaker. So I really feel like they felt comfortable with putting Jordan Fuller possibly on the practice squad or just cutting him because we have guys that kind of have proven themselves and they shown that they have the capability of being starters. And Dre Murphy says, yes, sir, Drew. I hate with the freaking passion streak got cut with the passion, bro. But I am glad LaCal London made the 53-man roster, though. 100 point blank in the period. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And it says, he also says they could have let the Alford or Natron Brooks do the kickoff and punt returns. Yeah, I agree. That's why I was shocked that they actually kept on the roster Jamal Agnew. No disrespect for them keeping Jamal Agnew. Jamal Agnew better return a kick for a touchdown this year, or he better really ball out throughout the season because they really kept him on the roster based off of what he's done in his past on other teams. To me, Jamal Agnew haven't shown us anything for us to just assume that he deserved a spot on the team. Now, I'm not trying to comfort Jamal Agnew in any way. I do think that he's a solid player. I've seen him play, when he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is a guy that's a threat that can take it to the house from anywhere on the field as far as his return game, his prowess in the return game. But I do think, like you said, that we possibly could have just used, one of the other guys. Let one of the other guys that was already on the roster be the kickoff return specialist because we have guys on this team that could actually do it. So I really feel like that came down to the coaching staff. They came down to our special teams coordinator and assistant coach, and he most likely vouched for a guy in Jamal Agnew, for his side of the ball. So I can't be mad at it. Like I said, I like Jamal Agnew's game. No disrespect to him. I really feel like the Falcons, they felt like he was the best fit for that particular position. So we're gonna see what he can bring to the table this year for us. Now, let's get back to the 53-man roster. So the kicker, of course, was Young Wei Koo. We did let go of Lenny Krieg, which I was surprised to see them get rid of Lenny Krieg or Lenny Craig, however you say his last name. We know he's German. If I'm messing up his name, but shouts out to him. I was surprised to see that he didn't make the roster. I do think he'll be a guy that will make the practice squad, but I don't know if he's going to make it through waivers because we know other teams watch these preseason games. They have scouts and things of that nature. And he did hit a 57 yarder in that first preseason game. So if another special team scout or coordinator saw that, which they did, most likely they're going to try to, take him and sign him off of our practice squad. Now, of course, you don't necessarily want to carry two kickers on the 53-man roster because we know that the roster is very thin and you can't sometimes allot for having that many guys on special teams as far as specialists. So I believe in Young Wei Koo. I do believe that Koo is going to turn things around based off of what he did last year. Of course, he was battling injuries last year, and that was Koo's first season where he kind of struggled. But I believe what he's done over his last 3 years prior to last year, I believe in what he's shown us as far as kicking game winners and things of that nature. So I felt like Raheem Morris and the coaching staff gave Young Wei Koo the benefit of the doubt based off of his performance last season. Now at the punter position, of course, you have Bradley Pinion, the veteran. He played really well during preseason, made a couple kicks where he kicked it really deep. Basically, not causing a touchback, but kicking the ball where it would land either out of bounds or it would give a good Falcons bounce. And I believe one of his punts was really, really good in one of those preseason games where he kicked the ball, it landed like at the 2 yard line and bounced back to like the 5 yard line. So we know that what Bradley Pinion is capable of. And then the long snapper, Liam McCullum, did make the roster again this year as well. So all in all, I was very intrigued by this 53-man roster. We didn't actually have 53 men on the roster. We only had 52 once it came down to the cuts, but that's because they did trade for Michael Jarrell today. So he'll make the 53rd player, I believe, on the roster. Now, I do think that the Falcons are going to trim the fat, and they're going to possibly, once all the teams have cut their players, and once all these guys hit the waiver wire, I expect the Falcons to kind of go back and possibly bring in some more guys. Like if they see somebody in the waiver wire that they like better than the guys that they actually kept on the roster. Now, the practice squad, I want to kind of give you guys my thoughts on the practice squad of a few players that missed the 53-man cut, but I think they probably will be back tomorrow listed on the practice squad. So first off, Jordan Fuller, as I mentioned earlier, CJ Henderson, the former first-round cornerback. We brought him in right at the end of training camp and for the last preseason game. But they did mention that he's the guy that they would like to bring back on the practice squad if he passes waivers. Khalid Kareem, he's the edge rusher. I believe he wears number 92. He's a really solid edge rusher as well. We brought him in last year, and he was activated for a few games. But he's another guy that I think could eventually end up on this roster, whether it's due to injuries or whether it's just due to attrition. I definitely think at some point Khalid Kareem, if he's on the practice squad, he'll definitely possibly get elevated for a couple of these games. Also, Easton Stick, the third string quarterback. I thought he would make the 53-man roster. I thought he was well deserving of making the roster. But like I said, when you're limited to 53 players, you have to allot those positions as wisely as possible. So I definitely think that Easton Stick is another guy that will possibly be on the practice squad unless someone else tries to sign him to their 53-man roster and he doesn't make it through waivers. Contavious Street, we talked about him already as well. I think the Contavious Street should be another guy that deserved to make the team. He's definitely a rotational guy, but he fits this mantra of being aggressive. He's like a bull in a china shop, as they say. He basically hits anything that moves, and he has a very strong power rush game as far as being a bull rusher, but he has very good short area quickness, but a very strong defensive lineman. So I definitely like him in his ability to stop the run and his ability to press the pocket. I believe it was last year in the Monday night game against the Raiders. He forced a safety in that game with his ability to just press the pocket, put his imprint on the line of scrimmage and just push his guy back into the quarterback, which he pretty much did in that game. And he has the ability to shoot gaps and things of that nature in the run game. So I could definitely see Katavius Street being brought back. Brandon Parker, the backup swing tackle, I could easily see him coming back because we don't have Caleb McGarry for the year. So I could easily see them wanting to bring him back for depth purposes. Chris Blair, as we talked about before, at the wide receiver spot. We know what he's capable of. And if he's not signed, which I'll be very shocked if he doesn't get signed by another team, he definitely will be on this practice squad if they can find a way to bring him back. Dylan Drummond is another wide receiver that played really well during preseason. I can see him being back. Nick Nash, another wide receiver, the young wide receiver that we brought in. I believe it was he came from San Jose State. He was a really good player in college last year, and played really well throughout training camp and the preseason. But it just came back to the numbers game. You can't carry 10 wide receivers and things of that nature. So that's the reason why him and Dylan Drummond both were cut. Simeon Barrow Jr., he played really well as well at that three tech position and that nose position. He's another guy similar to Contavious Street that's very disruptive on the defensive line. I could see him possibly being brought back to our practice squad. Lenny Craig, as I talked about, or Lenny Krieg, I can see him coming back to the practice squad. And then Carlos Washington Jr., who was the backup running back for our Falcons last year. He was on the practice squad last year. He was hurt during training camp, so he didn't play in any of the preseason games. And I think that's the reason why Nathan Carter ended up getting the edge over Carlos Washington, was because of the injuries and things of that nature that he had. So I could easily see him being brought back as well as far as the practice squad. So with that being said, you guys give me your thoughts. Definitely, if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Normally, I give you guys more of an opportunity and I'll read the chat and things of that nature. But I wanted to get that out the way because it's a lot of different players. So I'm going to get that 53-man roster out the way in my quick thoughts. But I'm going to scroll back a little bit because I know I missed some of you guys' questions and comments and stuff like that. So let me scroll back. All right, so let's see. So William Amy says, I think that we should start Helms over Watts, but if Watts gets beat a couple games out, Helms in. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna. From what I'm hearing, Watts is gonna be the starting safety, but I expect us to have a three safety rotation. So I believe Watts and Helms, those guys are interchangeable. So I think that they'll be using both of those guys. So I don't really think it matters who starts. I don't think that one of those guys just going to be on the bench the whole time. I think that they're going to be rotating them in based off of the packages that we're running on defense. Let's see. I got to scroll back here. So Georgia Texas boy says, what are your thoughts on the new tackle Jarrell, 6th-round pick last year? He did start some games for Seattle. Are we bringing him in for a swing or a potential starting tackle? To be honest with you, I think he's coming in to be a swing tackle because he's still a guy that's kind of developing. But if Elijah Wilkinson struggles, you could easily see Michael Jarrell into the game, and they possibly give these guys like an open competition to see who will give us the best production. But I think Jarrell's a solid player. From what I was able to, get the information and research I did today on him, because I wasn't familiar with him prior to assigning him. They said he's a former basketball player, very athletic. I went and looked at, when he was at the NFL Combine, some of the things that the scouts said about him was he was a very physical offensive lineman, very good at run blocking and run blocking and protecting and things of that nature. But needed to work on his footwork and stuff and work on his hand placement. So he had some couple things that he needed to work on, but that's every NFL player. So if he's in the NFL, he's in the NFL for a reason, and I think that he's a pretty good player. So I really think if you asking me swing tackle or starter, I think it's more of a swing tackle situation. And Dre Murphy says, why cut the kicker? Doesn't count against the 53-man roster. Yeah, I didn't get that either. I thought he didn't count towards the roster because he's an international player, but for whatever reason, maybe I'm not understanding the rules properly because they said that they cut him, but with every intention of bringing him back. So I don't even understand why you would cut him at this point if you can just stash him on your roster without him counting towards the 53 man. And Keith No Sweat says he ain't going nowhere. He's out international player. Right, right. That's what I thought. Yeah, he's an international guy from Germany. So I was surprised to see he was even cut. Trauma Lock says that's the only games he's played, right? And I wonder if you're talking about Trauma Locks. Put in the chat who you're talking about when you made that statement, because I'm not too sure who you're referring to. And let's see, Dre the Boxer, what's going on, bro? He says, I'm still not back comfortable with Koo. If he can go the first 5 to 6 games without a miss, I'll take it and not call for Craig. But if he misses multiple in the same games at any points, he's cooked. Uh huh. I agree. Yeah, I think the Young Wei Koo, I think some of his confidence got taken last year after he was injured and he missed a couple kicks. And we know that being a kicker, that's one of those mental type things. So I agree with you. The reason they brought Lenny Craig in to compete with him is for he wouldn't get comfortable or so he wouldn't get comfortable. But I agree with you, Dre. If he misses like a couple field goals or if he misses a game winning field goal or something like that, especially if it's like a chip shot, like an extra point or something like that, then yeah, it's going to be time for Craig to come to play to take over. And Dre the Boxer says Jew Ritter was waived. Also, you liked him better as a Kirk insurance policy over Easton or no? Um, I think that Desmond Ritter had more upside than Easton Stick. I won't say he has more that he's better than Kirk Cousins as an insurance policy. To be honest with you, I think that Kirk is probably the best insurance policy this Falcons team can have because what I'm concerned about is Penix goes down, God forbid, knock on wood, it's not gonna happen, but knock on wood, if it did happen, if you're like towards the end of your season, similar to what happened with the Eagles with Carson Wentz, he went down at like week 11, 12, 13. One of them later, that was in like the last quarter of the season when he got hurt with the Eagles and Nick Foles took over as the starter and he was able to lead them to the Super Bowl. I don't know if a guy like Desmond Ritter or even Easton Stick, to be honest with you, can lead this Falcons team to a deep playoff run if, God forbid, Penix were to get hurt. I would have more faith in Kirk Cousins because he's been a franchise guy. The moment won't be too big for him, or it shouldn't be too big for him because he's played a lot of NFL football and you wouldn't even have to dumb down the playbook. Like, I really feel like if Easton Stick takes over, God forbid, if something were to happen to Penix, you kind of have to dumb the playbook down a little bit because he, for one, doesn't have the full familiarity with the starters because he hadn't played with the starters. And for two, it's like in that particular situation, you know, at that point you're gonna have to, if you're in the playoffs, you may not be able to game manage your way to a win. You might need a quarterback that can make a couple throws, crucial throws at the crucial moments. And you got to have a guy at the quarterback position. You got to be able to diagnose the defense and stuff like that. And I don't know if Ritter or if Easton Stick, if those guys can diagnose the way that Kirk Cousins can. Kirk has been around a really, really long time, and he's put up big numbers throughout his career. That's why last year, with him turning the ball over at an alarming rate, how he did in those couple games after he had got hurt, that was not Kirk Cousins' MO. Like, yes, he is a guy that throws interceptions and stuff like that, but the way that he was throwing it, and they were just coming in bunches, and he was making foolish throws and foolish decisions. Kirk Cousins usually is a lot better than he was last year for us. And let's see here. So I want to scroll up and Dre put in looks like in here his practice squad guys. He said Easton Stick, Chris Blair, Nick Nash, Kobe Bryant, Street, Drummond. He said I don't like CJ Henderson, but he would be a good depth piece though. Yeah, I mean Chris Henderson. I mean, excuse me, C.J. Henderson is a guy that I actually like a lot for this Falcons team because of his experience. I don't necessarily think that he's better than some of the guys that we have, because we have guys that have a lot of upside, like Billy Bowman. And I like to give these young guys an opportunity to continue to develop. Sometimes when you bring in veteran guys, you don't they stunt the growth of your younger guys. So I like that the Falcons kind of clean house with some of the older guys that were on the roster, and they were able to go ahead and open it up and let these young pups, do their thing. Let these young guys spread their wings a little bit. Let's see. And William Amy says um, you got Helms or Watt starting at the safety position opposite of AJ Terrell. Excuse me, opposite of Jesse Bates. Um, I would go with Watts if I were the Falcons. I would start Watts. But one thing I like about DeMarco Hellams is he brings the physicality to the table. So it just depends on what the Falcons game plan is for that particular game. And it depends on how the Falcons are going to play their defense, their schemes. Like, what's the scheme going to look like? If you look for a guy that can cover, and diagnose what the opposing team is doing, in ball hawk, I would say Watts. But if you're looking for the intimidator, I like what Helms brings to the table because he's a downhill type guy. He's an intimidator, similar to Keanu Neal that was on our team in 2016, 2017. So I really feel like if you have Helms back there, guys going to think twice when they run across the middle to catch the football because they know that Helms is somewhere lurking, trying to lay a big hit. And Dre Baca says, no, Kirk is the best backup in the league right now. But I'm saying if a team trades for him, are we comfortable with Easton over some of today's cuts? Oh, okay. So I understand your question now. So thank you for clarifying for me, Dre. Um, if we were to trade Kirk Cousins and it's out of Easton Stick or Desmond Ritter, I think that that's a toss up. Um, I would say they probably would go with Easton Stick just because a lot of the fans gave Desmond Ritter a hard time, and even the media gave Desmond Ritter a hard time. So to be honest, I couldn't see Desmond Ritter coming back to the Falcons just for the media here in Atlanta. They would just eat that story alive. They wouldn't let him be able to chill. Even Michael Penix and all of the team would be having to answer questions about what do you feel about Desmond Ritter being back, this and this and that. So, I wouldn't mind having them back here, but I really feel like that would create a media uproar because the fans turned against Desmond Ritter when he struggled. Even though I feel like a lot of the stuff that Desmond Ritter went through was the fault of Coach Arthur Smith, I do feel like Desmond Ritter kind of took a black eye for it. And I don't think that the fans will be able to ever look past, even though Desmond Ritter played well at times in that season when he was the starter, before he was benched and then brought back as the starter. I really feel like Desmond Ritter wasn't given the proper time to develop. I really feel like quarterbacks need the first 3 years, 3 to 4 years, that is about development. So most quarterbacks in their first season are not going to just take off. Like what Jaden Daniels did is the anomaly. That's not the norm for a guy to just come in as a rookie and just go straight to the NFC Championship game or come right in and take over the reins and just be like special. Most guys come in and they're game managers to the point where even the greatest of greats, Tom Brady, when he first got in, those first couple Super Bowls that he won, he was not the driving factor. It was that defense and Bill Belichick that pretty much led them to the Super Bowl. Brady just had to go in there and manage the game and not make mistakes and be smart with the football. So I really feel like that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing for me is, let's see here. And Dre Murphy says, let's see here. D. Coleman said he thinks they went with David Seals because he's a big body. He's 6'5". How tall is Chris Blair, though? I think Chris Blair is like 6'2", if I'm not mistaken. I think that Chris Blair is more athletic than David Seals, but I think that they said that David Seals was lining up like in the position that Drake London normally plays because he's a really big physical body. Now, to me, he can't do what Drake does as far as go up and high point the football. He just a guy that's very cerebral and runs really good routes. So he knows how to create separation with his body, but he's not the best as far as he's not as athletic as a Drake London. When you talk about jumping ability, running ability, creating space, he understands angles and stuff like that. In David Seals, and he has really good hands. As far as he doesn't drop a lot of passes, and he's played a lot of football. So I really feel like they like David Seals because of what he showed them during training camp, like his ability to be professional and make plays. And John St. Clair says, "Hey, Jew, what's going on, John? I appreciate you joining me as always. Hope you're having a great evening." And Dre the Boxer says, "True, laugh out loud. Not worth the slight upside for the high possibility of it working or us even needing a backup." Yeah, I couldn't see the Falcons bringing back Desmond Ritter. As much as I think he was a good fit in Atlanta when Arthur Smith was here. I feel like he got a raw deal, but I don't think that based off of what how things played out, I couldn't see him back in Atlanta. And to be honest, I don't think that Desmond Ritter will want to come back and play for Atlanta. Just to be honest with you guys, not saying that he doesn't like Atlanta, but the way that he got kind of done dirty, I don't think that he would trust the situation. Like they would literally have to go through, with a fine tooth comb and tell him why they want him back and things of that nature. I don't think that he would just want to play for the Falcons. I think he would want to find another team before he would want to come back to the Falcons based off of how everything played out and how he was treated. And Dre says, "Jew, who you got them putting in Darnell Mooney's spot if he's not able to go by week 1?" Southside said Casey Washington. Me personally, I said say that bad man Hodge point blank in the period. Um, that's a good question. If Darnell Mooney can't go, Casey Washington was playing his role at practice. They had him lined up running all of the routes that Darnell Mooney would normally run. So I think I would have to agree um, that Casey Washington would get some go. But I think also that Cordell Hodge is not a player you can sleep on either. What I like about Cordell Hodge is anytime we called upon him last year, he stepped up to the plate and not only stepped up but made plays happen. You guys remember the Thursday night game where he catches the ball, a little curl pattern, catches like a 5 yard pass or a 6, 7 yard pass, turns around, cuts it up, upfield and scores a huge like 50+ yard touchdown catch and run. So those are the type of plays where you can't teach. That was pretty much all Cordell Hodge on that play. For him to catch the ball, guys surrounded him, draped all over him, and for him to be able to turn around, catch the ball, break loose, and take it in for a touchdown, which basically was the game-winning touchdown in that overtime game. That's not something that you can teach. So I really feel like Casey Washington and Hodge are going to get their opportunities if Darnell Mooney can't go in week 1 or if he misses some time. So we have a number of guys that can do a lot of different things. Good news is even Drake London is a guy, even though he's known as an outside receiver, he can play the slot. He did that a lot at USC, and that's why the Falcons liked him coming out of the draft because his versatility. So we have guys you can move around into those different spots. And Sonya Howe with the red and black in the chat. How you doing tonight? I hope all is going well with you. And y'all keep dropping y'all questions in the chat. Let me see what we're looking at. Yes, 9:50. So we got about 10 minutes left in the show. You guys know I try to keep it to an hour, but you guys definitely drop your questions. And make sure you hit that like button for your boy as you come in. It's 21 in here. It looks like we got 9 likes. Please hit that like button for your boy. It's the likes is free. If you like the super chat, it's definitely the button where you can super chat as well. Or if you like to donate to the channel, we appreciate you guys, man. I love doing content. Like I said, football is officially back. College football, the full slate kicks off this week. As you guys know, I am an Auburn Tigers fan, and we will be taking on the Baylor Bears in their home stadium. So it should be very interesting this Friday night at 8 p.m. I can't wait to see my Tigers, War Eagle, take on those Baylor Bears. But as we also said, football season is back. As of next week, we'll have our full slate of Thursdays. I think it's a Friday game in Brazil against, I think it's the Chiefs, and I'm not too sure they're playing, but I think that's the Brazil game. So it's a full slate next week. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Sunday, so and then Monday. So we're gonna have a lot of football to watch, and I can't wait. And Dre says the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be without four of their offensive starters, two wide receivers, and offensive lineman Christian Wirfs. Yeah, I know that they're battling the injury bug as well, which is not new for Tampa Bay because they have a very old team. They got a lot of veteran guys, like it seems like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, those guys at this point in their career because they passed the age of 30. Both of those guys stay injured. At some point, you feel like they're going to get injured. And then Christian Wirfs, I think he's going to be out for a long time. I don't know if he got injured for the season, but I know he's going to be out for a decent part of the year as well. So it's unfortunate that both our tackles, both Caleb McGarry and Christian Wirfs, are out. Because personally, I like when every team is at full strength. Because at that point, there's no excuses. Like right now, you're going into a game with guys hurt. Of course, you know, the NFL, these players know that they can't make the excuse. But we know that the Buccaneers fans are going to have an excuse. If we beat them, it was similar to what happened last year when we beat the Eagles on Monday Night Football. All of the Eagles fans that I talked to said, well, we didn't have A.J. Brown. If we had A.J. Brown, that game goes differently. But I feel like that's that's how the NFL is. Injuries is a part of the game. So I do believe having certain players in context matters, but at the end of the day, every team is experiencing some type of injury. Nobody, as they say, is fully healthy. After week one, none of these teams are going to be fully healthy. And let's see. And Dre says, then come week two, when we play the Minnesota Vikings, they will be without their number two wide receiver, Jordan Addison. Yeah, I seen he got suspended. So, yeah, we have a couple of different guys, big impact players that's going to be out for the first couple weeks of teams we play. Now, I really don't care about that necessarily. We still got to handle our business because I've seen us in the past play against teams that were wounded and injured, and they still beat us. So, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to put any bad juju on our team or anything like that, but I just want this team. What's most important right now is taking it one game at a time. That's what it's about this year. Not looking past nobody because last year we were 6-3. We had pretty much the division in the bag, and we let it slip because we got too comfortable. So in this season, we got to play every game like it's a playoff game. We got to play every game like they have their full 100% starters. They're at full strength. We can't go into a game lollygagging or assuming, well, they're injured, so we should win this game on paper. We should win this game. It doesn't matter on paper because when you step between those lines, these guys have families that they're trying to feed as well. These guys have mortgages and everything else, and people that they're trying to take care of. So when you step between those lines, you got to be ready to strap it up, lace it up, and get it on. You got to be ready to play because nobody's gonna lay down. Even if you're the better team on paper, that's just gonna make the other team play harder because these teams have something to play for. So it's what they always say: any given Sunday. Any team can be any team. It's only games are won and lost each week, but you got those records out the window and what's on paper that don't matter. We got to go in and we got to go in and do our thing basically. And let's see. And Dre says, I think that's why Minnesota Vikings are trying to get Adam Thielen back from the freaking Kitty Cats. Yeah, I seen that, but from what I'm hearing now, they're not going to make the trade. They were trying to get a trade done for a while. For the last couple of days, was for some reason they couldn't get the trade. They couldn't agree on the compensation. So it looks like Carolina might end up keeping Adam Thielen. They were saying that Adam Thielen wanted to go back to Minnesota because he played there for a number of years Like you said, Addison is suspended, and he just wanted to be back in Minnesota. I'm assuming he has a house there and things of that nature because he played so many years there that he just wanted to go back and possibly retire there. But they couldn't agree on the compensation, so it might not happen. Andre the Boston said, "Yeah, I was going to skip Atlanta news this week to curb my anxiety, but come to think of it, I gotta see if Mooney practices and how they treat him this week. Going to be interesting." Yeah, I mean, I don't really pay attention. I agree with you to the negativity of the Atlanta side part of the news, or even the negativity on YouTube or on Twitter or none of that stuff. I see it, but I don't try. I don't let it give. I try not to let it give me anxiety or be concerned about it, because at the end of the day, you feel how you feel. And I feel like this team could beat anybody. That's why I've had this Falcons team slated to be in the playoffs pretty much every like the last couple years, because I really feel like any team can beat any team on any given day. It's just about how you're coached. It's about how the players play, and it's about, at the end of the day, most of these games are going to come down to one possession. So it's about the team that doesn't make the key mistake at a crucial moment. In the last couple years, we've been that team that we beat ourselves a lot. We make a lot of mistakes in a lot of crucial moments, whether it's not understanding time of possession, us doing something foolish that let the other team back in the game. For whatever reason, there's been different reasons that we've lost games over the last couple years, but there were games that we could have easily have won. So this Falcons team has been right at the doorstep of the playoffs the last couple years. And let's see. Let's scroll down some. Exactly. And John Sinclair said, "Yeah, they had Saquon though, no excuses." Yeah, exactly. The Eagles, they had every excuse in the book last year, John. After we beat them on that Monday night, it's like, well, we didn't have this guy, we didn't have that guy. No, what really happened was they had no reason throwing that football to Saquon Barkley in the flat, trying to get that first down when he dropped it, easy first down. That would have ended the game. So that's what they tell you. That's why I say there are more games that are lost than there are won in a lot of situations. And that was a game where they made the wrong mistake at the crucial point in the game. I believe at the time when they had the ball, the Falcons didn't have no more timeouts, or they had like one timeout at the time. So they could have easily got that first down and just, either if they did get the first down, they attempted to run it because it was like third and short at the time. All they would have had to do was, even if they didn't pick it up, the clock would have been running, so the Falcons would have had to take a timeout. But they threw the ball, which stopped the clock for the Falcons. So plus they didn't get the first down, so they kind of screwed themselves in that situation. Let's see. And Dre the Boxer says Bucks and Vikings back to back will still be tough, but it may make it that much smoother on our rookies the rest of the way. Iron on iron. Yeah, I agree. That's a great point. Yeah, we have a rough schedule the first four games. We have like the Bucks, Vikings, like Bucks at home, go to Minnesota, then week 3 go to Carolina, and then I forget. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I believe week 4 is the Commanders. Am I correct? Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's the Commanders at home. So that first quarter is brutal. But as you mentioned, if we can make it out of that first quarter at least 2-2, we should be sitting pretty. If we can make it 2-2, I really feel like the Falcons could beat any of those teams. But it could be tough. We know Minnesota's always tough, especially in Minnesota, because they have a really good defense. The only concern I have about Minnesota right now is J.J. McCarthy is their quarterback. So he's basically a rookie because he got hurt last year. He didn't play. So I don't know what he's going to look like in his first season. That's my first concern. But outside of that, I don't have too many concerns about Minnesota. The Bucks, we know that they always play us tough because that's a division opponent, but that's a home game for us. We swept the Bucks last year, so I really feel like the first game of the season is going to be like, that's going to be the main, you know, That's gonna be the main game that we have to really pay close attention to. The first game of the season is huge because it's a division opponent and it's at home. So you want to win your home games, and you at least want to split in your division games. But it's gonna be important that we start off with a W, because if the Bucks start off in Atlanta the first game of the season and get a dub, they're gonna be feeling, getting comfortable, feeling like we're not gonna be able to go to Tampa and win, even though we swept them last year. So it don't matter what we play the Bucks, we can beat them anytime, anywhere. But they're gonna leave with a lot of confidence if they win the first game on our home turf. And let's see here. And Dre Murphy says, Jew, what you think about Scary Terry and Trey Hendrickson getting broken off, but Michael Parsons hasn't yet? So I was really happy for Terry McLaurin. For one, Terry McLaurin shouldn't have never had to wait for his contract. He's a guy, if you go look at his stats are crazy. I believe he's been in the league like 5 or 6 years, and every single year he's had over 1,000 yards, except his rookie season. And in his rookie season, he had like 900 plus yards. So he's one of those dudes that's like a model of consistency, similar to like a Mike Evans. Mike Evans is a guy for the Bucks that's had 1,000 yards every single year he's played in the NFL. I think for like 11 straight years or 12, something crazy. So that's what Terry McLaurin was like competing with. He's right up there with Mike Evans as far as he's been so consistent with 1,000 yards every single season receiving, and that's hard to do, especially when you're not playing with bona fide quarterbacks. If you look at the Washington Commanders, formerly the Redskins, Terry McLaurin played with so many different quarterbacks and not good quarterbacks. Sam Howell, Taylor Heineke, the list goes on and on and on and on. He finally got a good quarterback in Jalen Daniels, but prior to that, they had a quarterback carousel, and he's been consistent with getting 1,000 yards and being the best receiver on his team. So he definitely deserved the bag with him getting that 3 year, $96 million. He shouldn't have had to even wait for that. And Trey Hendrickson, he was able to rectify with that 1 year deal where they modified it, and he's getting 30 million in the 1 year, which I think was a no-brainer as well. Trey Hendrickson has led the league in sacks the last 2 years, two back-to-back seasons with 17 and a half sacks. It's not many guys that can say that in the history of the NFL has done that, let alone in today's current game. So he's a one-man wrecking crew with Trey Hendrickson. So I definitely think that he deserved his money. And I think next offseason, he's going to get that $100 million contract from Cincinnati, or he's going to get a huge deal from somewhere else if Cincinnati decides not to pay him his money. Somebody's going to break him off even more than what he got this year. And then Michael Parsons, I feel like in their situation, that's all Jerry Jones. We know how Jerry Jones does business. He does business foolishly, like he did with Dak Prescott. Instead of paying guys early, especially guys that you know are going to be worthy of being paid, like a Michael Parsons. Michael Parsons should have been paid in like year 3. He shouldn't have got to the end of that contract and have to get paid. So that falls on Jerry Jones of doing, not doing wise business. You don't want to have to pay the highest top dollar for guys. So you don't wait until their contract is the ink is completely dried. And then now you want to say, give us a discount. He should have been paid, Michael Parsons. Like I said, after year 2, going into year 3 in that offseason, I would have been trying to restructure his deal or give him a new contract. Because then he would have got out in front of some of these other guys that have gotten paid. Because at this point, with TJ Watt getting paid this offseason, Myles Garrett getting paid, all these other defensive linemen getting paid, based off of Trey Hendrickson's numbers, his agent is going to basically state, like, we got to pay my client at the top of the market because, he's done so much. He's done so much. And that's the same thing with the Michael Parsons situation. Michael Parsons has been a Pro Bowler every single year he's been in the league, a multiple time All Pro. So he's looking at Trey Hendrickson. He's looking at the TJ Watts of the world as well, saying, you got to pay me at the top of the the board. I got to be the highest paid defensive player of all time. Like, you got to pay me that TJ Watt type money, $100 million with a lot of it guaranteed because Michael Parsons is playing like a generational talent. Like based off of his stats and what he's done, he's had a double digit sacks every single year he's been in the NFL. So you got to give him his props. He's just like similar to a Trey Hendrickson. Like I've done it consistently where it's no doubt in my mind that Michael Parsons is a top five pass rusher in the NFL. So with him being a top five pass rusher, you got to pay him like it. Like it's not going to be cheap to afford a player of his caliber, but I really feel like he's worth the money. Like he's a model citizen. Outside of him doing his podcast, which is nothing wrong with doing a podcast, he's done everything that you can ask, and he's went about it the right way. He hasn't gotten in any trouble off the field. He hasn't, he hasn't done anything not to warrant being paid. So when it comes to giving guys their money and giving guys their contracts, I always, for the most part, side with the players. Growing up, I used to didn't understand when I was a kid and stuff like that, and I was just a fan of the game. I didn't understand the business side of the game, but as I got older and I started understanding the business side of it, I'm like, we need to stop turning on these players and start turning on the owners and stuff like that. When guys put they put it all on the line for your organization, you shouldn't bet against them. And that's basically what the Cowboys do with their star players. They're hoping that Michael Parsons get injured before they have to pay him so they can use that as a way to leverage, well, you don't deserve to be paid because we can't trust if you're going to be the same player you've been. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to basically find a way to maneuver where they can get some type of discount, which is not, to me, is not the right thing to do. Based off of what Michael Parsons has given the Dallas Cowboys, all of the revenue, the 11 jerseys that's in that stadium, all of the marketing and stuff like that he does for the team, he's well worth over $100 million for what he's given to the Cowboys, not just on the football field, but even off the field with the merchandise and stuff like that. And being that the Cowboys are the number one franchise, not just in the NFL, but in the world, I feel like they gotta, they owe it to him. They owe that money to Michael Parsons. So I really feel like there's no way around it. They're gonna have to pay him his money. And let's see here. And Smooth C78, what's going on? He says, Jew, I hope all's going well with you tonight, my brother. And it says, Drake says, what do you think Drake London's gonna ask for? I say what you think Drake's gonna get paid. I think Drake's gonna get that top dollar too. Drake's gonna be probably a top five paid wide receiver when it's all said and done. Because I really feel like even with our Falcons, even though we pay our guys, I don't think that we do contracts the best way either at times. I do think that Terry Fontenot did a great job with Caleb McGarry and getting a discount and stuff like that. He did a good job of being able to get him re-signed under a reasonable contract. But I would even like to see us do business a little bit better. I always bring up the Philadelphia Eagles because to me, Howie Roseman, whatever he's doing to the books, he knows how to cook the books where they always have elite talent, but they always have, it seems like, cap space to bring in more talent, which doesn't make sense to me. How do you have Jalen Hurts under contract, Jordan Mailata, your other tackle, under contract, your other Lane Johnson, your other tackle, under contract, Saquon Barkley just got a new contract, like Devontae Smith under contract. Like, how do you got everybody under contract and they all have decent money, like a lot of guaranteed money? So that's what I mean by he understands how to cook the books. They always have money to bring in guys, but they always have cap space, and they always seem like they star players under contract already. So it's just like he understands how the game works, and he operates the salary cap the best to me. So, whoever is sitting up under him in Philly, if I were the Falcons, God forbid, if, God forbid, and I don't want to see this happen, but if Terry Fontenot wasn't our GM at for any reason, I would want somebody from that Philadelphia Eagles tree, whoever's over there, to figure out how they're cooking those books, because they're really doing a really good job of cooking the books. So that's why I kind of stand with it. And John says, out, not like the Cowboys, don't have the money. Let's see. And what's going on, Miss Maggie in the building? Y'all show her some love. What's going on tonight, Miss Maggie? And Dre Murphy says, do you think my boy, my dog, Kyle Pitts, the unicorn, will get paid if he balls out this year? He should. I mean, to be honest with you, like I just mentioned, I don't want to hear that the Falcons don't have money to pay Drake, Pitts. You have the money. You just have to know how to allocate it. To be honest, the tight end position, I don't think there's a tight end that has $100 million contract. So certain positions you can kind of maneuver and leverage it where you can pay Kyle Pitts a decent contract, but you don't have to necessarily break the bank and make him the highest paid tight end in NFL history. And luckily, even if Kyle Pitts balls this year, to me, based off of what he's done in his career so far, he can't demand the highest top dollar. The reason I say that is he's with a first round pick, so the Falcons could easily franchise tag him next year. Like if he decides, like, you know, I want crazy astronomical amount of money, the Falcons could easily franchise Kyle Pitts. So I think that we're in a good position when it comes to Kyle Pitts. He doesn't take me as one of those guys that's going to demand a whole lot of money, but I do think he's worthy of getting paid if he has a big season. Even if he doesn't have a big season, Kyle Pitts to me is a guy that is deserving to get paid. It's just really him getting the bag is up to him. It's based off of how he performs this year. So all of the cards right now are in Kyle Pitts' hands. As far as Drake London, I feel like Drake London is a lock to get paid no matter what happens this year based off of what he's done through his first 3 years in the league. But for Kyle Pitts, I really feel like this is a big year for him because he only really had one really, really productive season, which was his first year where he went over 1,000 yards. The other years he's played okay. They really didn't get him involved enough last year to me. But like I said, the ball's in Kyle Pitts' court at this point. So he's going to have to step up at the end of the day. If he wants to get that big contract, everything is, in his control. If he balls and he does what he needs to do, I think the Falcons will pay him. But if he doesn't, then, he could end up with another team. And let's see. Andres, I forgot about the franchise tag. Yeah, and that's basically what Jerry Jones was saying when he recently talked to Stephen A. Smith. He was saying the same thing, but Michael Parsons is like, yeah, Michael Parsons is on his last year, his deal, but I can easily franchise tag him. So basically, he can franchise tag him for the next 2 years. Now, would that be wise? I wouldn't advise doing that, but that's one thing about these, football, the way that football is set up and the contract situation set up, it's kind of a lose-lose situation for the players. The owners hold the keys to how much money you can get paid. Even if they don't really want to pay you the top dollar, they can literally just continue to franchise tag you. And that's why I always say about Kirk Cousins. Everybody talks about Kirk Cousins. He stole money, and why has he made so much money in his career? If you go back to when he first was in Washington, that he was under his rookie contract as the backup. Then he gets a contract extension with Washington, but they kept doing 1 year prove it deals. So he was getting paid like 30 million a year, 40 million. At that time was high money, 40, 50 million a year for one season. So that's the reason why Kirk Cousins, if you look at him being one of the highest paid quarterbacks of NFL history, really wasn't falling on his shoulders of that he was stealing money. It was falling on the shoulders of Washington, and they were doing bad business. Instead of just giving him a bigger contract, like a 3-year extension, you better off sometimes giving the player just a 3-year extension than keep franchise tagging them, because franchise tag is guaranteed money, 1 year, but it's fully guaranteed. So that's the reason why Kirk Cousins was able to manipulate the salary the way he was, because they never fully committed. The Commanders at the time, the Redskins, they never fully committed to him. So he was able to get like, I think they franchise tagged him like 2 or 3 years in a row, and he made like a easy 30 to 40 million a year, guaranteed that one guaranteed year. So he was just racking up, a bunch of guaranteed money because they didn't want to commit a 2 or 3 year contract. So that's my thoughts. And John St. Clair, that's exactly my point. He says if they franchise tag Parsons, they're going to lose him when it's done. Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't franchise tag him. I feel like pay him because he deserves his money. And I would rather pay my players early than late, because I really feel like the biggest thing that Jerry Jones and a lot of these teams don't pay attention to is when you do this, you make your player disgruntled. And who wants a disgruntled player? Because you're not going to get the best out of them. They're dragging out this whole contract situation to the point where he's like, I don't want to be a Dallas Cowboy anymore. Well, that has an effect on the team. That has an effect on him, how he feels about his team and his teammates and all of that. He doesn't necessarily feel any negativity towards his teammates, but he feels negativity towards the organization as a whole. And once players already can see like this owner and this franchise really don't really care about me, not only as a player but as a person, because they're basically telling me that I'm not worth the dollars, that they're going to go out. Some players will go out to the field with that mentally in their head, and they're like, I'm not going to go 110%. So if it's a play where I could have made it, but it was a play where I would have had to strain, or if I'm going into a game and maybe I'm a little bit nicked up and I could go out there and play, but I'm nicked up, I'd rather not go out there and play because I don't know if this is going to be my last chance to get paid. So you have players that'll literally say, instead of going out there and being nicked up, I'll just sit out and say I'm too hurt to play, so that I don't risk down the road being able to get money, which makes sense to me. Like, as much as that sounds bad, like, why would a player think that way? It's a business at the end of the day. It's a business on the player side as well. And NFL players don't have long careers. Majority of them don't have long careers. So one hit, it can be a Ryan Shazier type moment, like for the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he basically was out of the league after one catastrophic play where he tried to make a routine tackle, and he got injured, and then he couldn't play anymore. So as much as we hate on the players and we say they make millions of dollars and they should just go out there and play and stuff like that, they have to protect themselves as being an asset to be able to give their families and create generational wealth for themselves and for their families. Because once these guys retire, they still have a lot of life to live. So I understand the business side of it now, of why players feel the way that they do. And like I said, I just don't like the way that the Cowboys do business just in general. If you look at, we're dang near next week away from them. They're playing on next Thursday night against the Eagles in Philadelphia. And instead of Michael Parsons getting ready, watching film, getting ready to play against the Eagles, he's been basically lounging around, waiting for a contract extension when he could have been out there during training camp going 110%. So now y'all going to expect him to go out there next Thursday and go play in a football game when he hasn't even prepped the correct way. So it's chances are he could easily go out there and get hurt because he hasn't been repping and prepping and getting ready for the season like he should have, because the team didn't want to go ahead and give him his money. So now he's going to be half telling it, basically, which is not his fault, because I'm sure he's working out, but working out and playing football and being at training camp and all of those different things are two different things. Just lifting weights and stuff like that is not playing football. So I blame that on Jerry Jones. This is not the first time he did that. He did the same thing to Dak Prescott, made him wait. The difference is Dak Prescott actually went to training camp and participated in all of that. But it's just like this whole situation, I think, is just a bad situation. It's a bad look on the Cowboys part and their ownership part as far as these other players are looking at the way that they're treating Michael Parsons, and they're setting a bad precedent. So they're doing bad business. So with that being said, I'm about to get ready to get up out of here. But man, I appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to support the channel. Like I said, if you guys enjoy the content, you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button for your boy. We're on the road to 3,000 subs and beyond. But like I said, the season is right around the corner. Next Thursday night, the Eagles and the Cowboys. Of course, we know we have the Sunday 1 o'clock opener at home against the arch rival Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So all of the content, we getting ready. Everything should be prepped towards the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As far as our players, they need to get their mindset, focused on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not look ahead to the first quarter of the season. They need to. Only thing I want this team focused on is beating Tampa Bay in 2 weeks. That's it. I don't care about. I don't want to look no further than the food in front of us. We need to finish our food. So they're the team standing in our way. They've been the team that's been standing in our way in this division for the last 4 years. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been standing in the way of us winning the division. So I feel like this is fitting for them to be the first team that we have to beat to overtake this division. And it starts 2 weeks from now on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We got to go in there to our home stadium, and we got to set the tone for the season and let everybody in the division know, but definitely let the Buccaneers know that this is our division. And this year, we're not going to let it slip, like we did last year when we beat them twice, but still end up losing the division. So with that being said, I'm gonna give you guys your nights back, your night back. Shouts out to my boy John. He says, "Have a good night, Jew." Shouts out to my boy Dre. I appreciate you guys continuing to support. Shouts out to Miss Maggie for joining me. Muppet 474 says, "What teams are you fan of?" Oh, this is the Atlanta Falcons. Hopefully you're a Falcons fan, but this is the Falcons. But if you're not a Falcons fan and you enjoy football content, make sure you hit that subscribe button over here. But as always, Falcons Nation, you guys have a blessed night. Have a blessed rest of the week and weekend. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up, be blessed. Peace.